let's get started then. So, Brian, Tim, just first my reflections from the two conversations we had with Jeremy and Mike. I guess I found them really, really enjoyable. I was struck, as I said in my reflecting notes at the end of each, just how much of the discussion was focused on people rather than process. Brian, I wonder what your reflections were.
Yeah, that's my reflection on every process, S&OP process, where you talk to people. They go, yeah, we're going through all the motions, we do this and this, but it doesn't work. That's because they miss. The point is about people and the emotions and the politics around making decisions, not just getting data. If it was that simple, everybody would have done it months ago. It's all about understanding the emotions that sit around why they won't make decisions, the politics that sit around what's in it for me question. Because if you can't bridge the what's in it for me, people will do what's in it for me. I will make a decision that suits me, gives me power, gives me political prowess, even if it undermines what the business is. So it was a refreshing experience to see everybody else said, yes, the ones that worked is because we got the people level right. And the ones that they had a bitter experience with was because they just focused on the process and ticking the boxes. So yes, it was very refreshing to see that we had the same thoughts.
Excellent. So Tim, you weren't an active part of the discussions, but you've obviously had a chance to look at some of the videos, warts and all. So any surprises for you?
I don't think any really big surprises, but I think again it was a bit the fact it was all about process, all about the people, not the process, was kind of really good, and again not desperately surprising. I thought there's some really good takeaways about the fact that it's no good just being there. You've got to make decisions, and you've got to be decisions that are, I'm going to use the word compromise, not necessarily a compromise, but they're definitely not a consensus, but that's the best professional judgment of what the business wants. And then you have to live it outside. And I think particularly when Jeremy was talking about the fact that, the kind of the S&OP conductor in there has done a great job at holding people to account, making sure they come prepared, making sure once things have been done, that those are lived, and that becomes a lived truth wherever you are. So I think that's kind of really interesting. And I think I'm probably the one person who knows both of the businesses that were there, and they are hugely different in dynamic. So the needs of SOP will be massively different. So even a business like Tilda, where it's rice, and you think, well, that should be relatively simple to forecast. But the reality is basmati is only harvested once a year, and they need to age it at least 6 months before they can use it. You're potentially 2.5 years out. So you're having to say, how much rice am I going to need in 2.5 years? So it really does have a big strategic importance in that way. Whereas, in the Pearson case, there's a lot of bespoke engineering and so on and so forth. So their focus is not just about what production capacity, but it's the balancing the engineering capacity as well. So I think it's really interesting how the same dynamic was put forward in massively different businesses.
I think that's it. It's different industries, different sectors, different sort of underlying challenges, but ultimately all solved by addressing the same fundamental problem. So if you you talk about Tilda, it's that you can only get this product once a year, and then it's got. Whereas if you take somebody like Pearson, it's more, if I want to grow, I have to spend a fortune buying a new machine.
Yeah.
They don't grow on trees, and you have to get them. So it might be more readily available, but it's a big capital investment, and you need to think about it of the timing. So different products, different, but it's I need to think about something that's way over there. Otherwise, I'm going to be stuck.
Yeah, and I think it was also interesting. Both of them talked about the fact that sometimes the time scales that get focused on are too short. They kind of get broken into the S&OE type kind of time frame, and absolutely, for this to be effective, that's not what this is about. This is about getting the clarity of investment and resourcing and what the demand is going to be many months into the future. So you can either make sure you've got the right amount of rice in the right place at the right time, or you've ordered the right equipment to do stuff, or you've got the right engineers on place to do it. So I think it was really interesting, and all of that still comes down to the people, because these are strategic business decisions, but it's still the people.
And Jeremy picked on about getting the right person to play the S&OP conductor.
It's
not just the right skill sets, but it's the right values, the right behaviour
Yeah.
of holding people to account and being quite comfortable in the room of everybody's more senior than you. They're all directors,
Yeah.
VPs, managing directors, and you're not.
Yeah.
And you're going to hold every single one of them to account. So they need that presence of character to go make the decision.
But it also says a lot about the culture of the business has to be right in order to allow that to be an acceptable behaviour.
Yes. Or it needs to change its culture. If it
Yeah.
wants to, if it wants S&OP to be effective,
Yeah.
if it doesn't address its cultural differences, then it needs to look at, well, how does your S&OP need to be?
Yeah.
What does it need to have round about it? And yeah, there's lots of white papers of it fails because everybody keeps on focusing back to what is S&OP.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's all about the execution side, and then, hey, Bristol, we have surprises because we didn't buy enough stuff.
Yeah.
We didn't make the investment when we were supposed to. We didn't recruit when we were supposed to, and we've now missed the opportunity because it goes elsewhere.
Yeah, indeed.
The other thing that came out quite a few times was this idea of needing either top level sponsorship or top level leadership.
Yeah.
Different terms we use, but I guess they're that essence of top down support from the CEO was absolutely essential.
Yeah. Yeah.
So again, it was interesting to hear that from both their businesses, but has that been your experience elsewhere as well?
If I've gone that, if it's not sponsored by the right person, it becomes flavour of the month. You do something, but nobody's really bought into it. So they attend, but there's no commitment. And if you don't have the CFO, the CEO, the CEO ruling it, then people believe they can get away with not doing stuff. And as a consequence, it falls away. So it may start off being led by your supply chain leader because they initiate it, but it needs to rapidly move into, so where should it sit? And my own view is, if you get it right, it should sit with the CFO, because then the S&OP process becomes the budgeting process, becomes the S&OP process, and it all fits together. The CEO, everybody go, well, it should be them. Go, well, their job is to go and run the business. The CFO is understanding, making sure, are we investing the right time? Are we driving to achieve whatever the business strategy is? So I would pick the CFO is the where it's interesting.
But it's interesting though, if you look at, not to betray any confidences, but if you look at Tilda, he was very much the CEO who was driving it, and he held some of these people to account as well for not coming properly prepared, which kind of, I guess, made the conductor's role that much easier, but and gave him the implied authority. So I think that was an interesting insight. But yeah, they're now moving into kind of integrating it or potentially integrating it into their budgeting process, and then the dynamic changes and the need moves across. And
that's where I go. If it ultimately ends up with the CFO and they own it and they're doing the budgeting process, then they've got so much skin in the game. That it might start and go through transitions of, it's your head of supply chain, then the CEO, because everybody reports to him. But then if you get to that next level of maturity of S&OP and budget just becoming the same cycle, who runs the budget? It's the CFO.
And it's interesting. I've seen a couple of examples where it's gone to the next level of maturity, where actually there is no annual budgeting process.
Yes, exactly.
Where actually there is this effectively a rolling 12-month, 18-month, 2-year budget. And so you can't say we fixed the budget on this day and we said we were going to buy a machine in 9 months, but actually demand has grown or shrunk or what have you. You know, the only thing you can be sure about is like forecast, anything sure about a budget, it won't be accurate.
No.
And therefore, if it's dynamic, it allows you to continue to make the decisions with the best judgment, best information you have at that point in time. And I think that's when you really get the leveraging effect.
It helps make all those decisions that are all documented of.
But
if you focus on 3 months, and I pick 3 months because that's how long it takes at least to recruit somebody. So to be able to flex, you need to be at that horizon, but you need to cover 18 months, because if you buy a new CNC machine, it's that distance. And if you take the example of the rice, it's once a year. So it needs to be that horizon. So no matter what business you're in, you might have different horizons, but it's going to be 18 months out, because that's where it takes that long to make the investment and get the machines in.
So when you talked about, I remember saying there's inevitably careers and invested and emotions associated with this. How do you think you take that emotion out? Because it's kind of a data-driven, objective process. Therefore, you have to not make sure the passion is still there, but take out the emotions, the irrational emotions. How do you go about that?
A lot of it is like Deming's one of be careful what you measure because it will drive the behaviours. And that's the S&OP needs the right measure, because if I'm measured on manufacturing output, then I'm going to be driven to do that. But if everything's about, are we making money? Are we making profitable money? I've seen many examples where sales will come and go, I want a sale. You know, we can't make that. We don't have machines. We don't have the capacity. And then sales get upset because they're being championed to go out and make sales. But because it's not been in the discussion of
what sales to make.
Yes, or what you're going to sell, or where we've got capacity. So a lot of it is making sure the business is aligned with what it's trying to achieve. And part of that is, so how are you measuring people? How are you incentivizing them? And how do you reward people? And it's even in the words. The best example I ever said was, they binned the word strategy. There was only the business strategy. There was no procurement strategy and no supply chain, no manufacturing. There is the business, and everything aligns to that strategy. And if it doesn't,
what are you doing?
Don't do it. And it was as simple as that. So it was, some of it is,
it's like the Toyota Hoshin Canry.
It's the power of the words. It's, they might not mean much to some people, or they're interchangeable, but it's again, we have one strategy. So stop talking about your procurement strategy. You've got your procurement approach about how you're going to deliver the business. And it's all that words around what's the business? What is it we're trying to do? And so it will take a long time. That's why S&OP deployments will take 3 years. Because you're changing behaviours. And then you start going, well, what is it we want? And it's been in the word of, it's about consensus. No, so I think it was Margaret Thatcher said, consensus is the least worst option, or the least offensive option, as opposed to, you pick the one that's right for your business. If that upsets somebody, it's like, okay, but it's the right thing to do.
You don't do it callously, and I guess the more they're involved and engaged in this process, the more they will understand, if not actually totally support the decision. And I think that's kind of key as well.
And it's creating that culture where you don't start punishing people for not delivering on their bit. It's the right, we're not delivering that, right, how are we going to do this? And you see support as a welcomed activity, as opposed to keeping people at arm's length.
Defending my turf rather than,
and that all goes back to get the right people in the meetings. If you have everybody attending every meeting, then you've got to question, why are they there? If you've got demand turning up to the supply meeting, it's like, well, are you there to check on us? Are you there to sort of undermine us? And it flips the other way. If you get supply start going to the demand meeting, it's like, oh, I don't believe you're going to do that. I'm going to do something else. It's building that level of trust that you do your bit, I'll do my bit, and we'll get together to make sure it all balances out.
I was struck today, and also in the earlier conversations, by how much around S&OP, when it's implemented well, does get to the heart of how an organisation works with each other. So how people collaborate, how people don't collaborate. So it also feels to me like once you start implementing S&OP, you are actually getting to the heart of the organisation, its heartbeat, and including the cadence.
And it's that discipline, it's the cadence of the discipline of, it's a step that there's a different step that happens every week, and they must happen. You can't skip anything. It's like you can't skip leg day, because then it doesn't work. You need every step to happen, and this is going back to whether it's the CEO or the CFO. You need somebody to go, no, this is really important. You can't stop it just because, oh, it's August, we're all on holiday. We'll not have one this month. It's like, oh, okay, that's risky. Why is August not important? Why is Christmas not important? So we're not saying don't have holiday. That's it's not that. It's about how do you empower the teams and get the right people to turn up.
The reality is you can't not produce your financial numbers for the end of the month, because that's required to be done. Why is this any different?
That's it.
And I think in kind of, if it gets to its natural conclusion, this becomes the, if you like, the core discipline of the business. Everything else feeds into or out of that decision strategy. What your capital investment, your recruitment, your materials purchasing, it all comes out of that, right through to what products you're designing for the future and where you think they're going to be made and how made, etc., etc.
And if I pick up on the holiday bit, if you don't have to go to every meeting every single week, well, you can still have your holiday.
Yeah.
Because if you're the executive team, you're only actually going to the last stage of it.
Yeah.
If you're demand team, you're in the first stage. Supply team's in the middle bit. So yeah, you can time all your holidays around the key events you've got to do. And also it promotes let's train people up. Who's your trusted lieutenant that's going to go? Because if it's all me, then I can never have a holiday. And that
doesn't seem unreasonable. But,
no, it's all about holidays.
So one of the things that we wanted to do in today's conversation was, I guess, widen it out a little bit to include experiences from other organisations. Also, we focused very much on two organisations in the first two discussions, struck by the similarities as well as obviously we talked about the differences. But in your experiences, are there anything that we didn't talk about, things that were missed that you've seen in other organisations that are either real challenges or are actually key success factors?
We talked about it a little bit, but everybody goes on technology, AI, we can do all of these things. Well, yes, they help, but they help, that's all. It's like going to the gym and going, I can use free weights or I can use a machine. It helps, it makes, because but it doesn't stop the underlying of, if I don't lift weights, I'm not going to change. So yes, technology helps. But you see lots of instances where we get sold in the technology. We must have this. And then you go, but I've got no data. Well, everything in my ERP system is rubbish. So I've now got a really fancy system that doesn't know what to do. Or they focus so much on a system implementation that by the time they put it all in, everybody's lost interest because they've said S&OP is the application.
Yeah. And then if you do that, you don't get the ownership, do you? Because it becomes the system becomes the ownership rather than the people around it. And I think, technology is a kind of an enabler and it helps. But if you do it in a relatively manual way, but with good quality data, in the early stages, you get real buy-in, real leverage, real commitment to it. And then you can use the technology because then everyone's bought into the process. And I think, I think it'd be worth also taking a little bit of time to talk about kind of how we go about implementing it, because we have a number of clients.
Finishing off on the technology, the problem is if you put the technique, if you make them one and the same, the S&OP process is the technology. If the technology doesn't do exactly what it's supposed to do, then they get paired up and goes, well, S&OP doesn't work and the technology
doesn't work.
So that's why they should be
agreed.
Different. But picking on implementation, that is always a more interesting topic of where do you start?
Yeah, where would you start? Or does it vary organisation to organisation?
Sometimes. I give two examples. I've seen organisations where they have decided we're going to do S&OP, but we need to get some data.
Yeah.
And if you do that way, at least when you then go into the process, you've got some data that means something, they can start making decisions. So that makes effective decision making. I've seen other ones where they've done the other way, they've launched it and they've had S&OP, but they've no data. And the problem is when you get in there, they go, so I don't believe the decision I'm making because I don't believe the data. So it needs to be a bit of both. The first bit is, do I have data to be able to make this work? Just even the base information. And then it's bringing everybody along. But it all starts with, let's educate everybody. What is S&OP? And what is it not?
And what's its purpose?
Yes, what is it trying to do?
And I think just picking up on the data bit, because I think there's a real, and again, another people element here, which is there is this question of is data available, there's also, and are people willing to share it in the right way with the underlying assumptions? So there's always, even if there is the data there, there's always this kind of people element underneath. And do they share it? Do they actually explain it? Do they share with you the assumptions that sit behind that?
This is kind of the role of the conductor, I think. But part of their role is to make sure that we're getting the truth, a single version of the truth at all levels, and therefore you're making decisions on the basis of good quality data. So, which is why, again, the selection of that individual was really critical, because they have to punch above their weight and exert influence where they don't actually have authority.
And in terms of the data, it's understanding of what do I really need? And my term is roughly right, but not wrong. So you can't say the distance to the moon is a mile, because I wouldn't believe you. If you said it's 100,000 miles, I go, that could be right, roughly right. I'm good with that. And
We'll pick that later.
The point is, as you get closer to the moon, you're able to make a better judgment of how far it actually is away.
And that's where your data comes in. Of if you spend all your time trying to make it perfect, you'll never end up doing anything. So it's like, what's the basic I need? Well, I need a forecast. Well, it's rubbish. Yeah, but are we using it for other stuff? Yes. Well, it's roughly right. Let's go with that. At least we're consistent. Do we know the basic information of, well, what's the factory capable of doing? So how many days is it open? How many hours has it got? How many people? You need some base information you've got. And if it's roughly right, good, let's go with it. And over time, you will refine it and you will use all the new technologies that will make it even better. But it's all about allowing people to make a decision that they believe in.
And I did overtalk you there just as we were going on about the data side, but you did start talking about the education piece, and maybe we could finish off with that as a parting shot in terms of where to start, because I know in the past you've said education is one of the first and most important steps. So do you like to say a little bit more about what that means and how you go about it?
Yeah, it's so if you're coming from a planning background, you probably were indoctrinated about what is S&OP, what is S&OP, and where they all fit, planning, how you get all that. But if you're commercial marketing, that's not part of your remit.
Yeah.
If you're an engineer, that's not part of your remit. So we need to help everybody understand what it is, what it's not, and more very important, what's it trying to achieve as an output. And that will help people understand of where it fits, of why each step is different, and why you get to turn one bit and you get to turn the other, and you don't have to come in, and it will start building the education and the trust. So you can play, there's lots of games and simulations that will help you understand it, but ultimately it's taking people on the journey. S&OP is this. This is where it fits into everything else. This is what it's supposed to achieve, and here's the things it doesn't do.
And here's what's in it for me.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I think that's the key bit. And I think once you've gone through that education, part of the education is kind of almost saying, well, that's what it is. So how does that apply to our business? What do we want it to achieve in our business?
Yeah.
And where are the tensions? And you get, this is before you've got into the process, you're kind of outing some of the issues and having discussions and getting contested. I'm really struck by, I've seen your deck you use when we're doing this, and you've got, people around a table facing out with all different numbers, and then them facing in, and that's effectively what you're trying to achieve, isn't it? Trying to get everyone to understand that by everyone facing in and being honest and sharing, that way you get the best decisions.
And I keep on looking at that diagram and go, there's one bit that's missing, and I keep on, I need to change it, which is the HR element of it, because we all talk about people, but it's getting what's the culture and value of your organization?
Yeah.
And then if you start looking at those, what are the values that we will reward? And then you start going to your S&OP process and go, are we living our values? Do our values help deliver this? And if they don't, which one's going to change? Because if they're like this, the S&OP process, that's what we want to drive the business, but these cultures don't fit. How do we either line that one up that way or line that one that way? And it's an element of, because not only HR will go off and they will do the training and everything else. But they are even more removed from the S&OP process. It would mean nothing to them whatsoever. But how do we influence them to not have the HR strategy, but have the business strategy that helps drive all of this?
That feels like a really fantastic insight and reflection to finish off, and maybe even a starting point for a future conversation. So thank you, Tim. Thank you, Brian.
Cool.